Hi, my name is Carolina Costa and I'm Director of Photography of the Film Day. I've always been fascinated by the idea of not showing someone or something in their entirety. I like the idea that we're obscuring a part of someone's self or a whole scene that you cannot see it. And that's always been done, I guess, in literature and other forms of art, but I think it's fascinating how you can express it in the art of cinema. Face can always be hiding the real emotions we have inside, and it can have many masks. Marlon Brando said something like, people, when they didn't know something about themselves, they'll be carrying masks to hide it. Expanding on that idea, there's a technique called veiling, sometimes connected to flaring or an actual object of a veil of some sort covering frame. Use of mirrors and obstructing frame are also part of that same technique. I've always been interested in that, and I think there's one frame in particular, the Ratcatcher, which has always fascinated me in many ways, has been haunting me for a long time. Here you can see some screen grabs from Uncle Bumi, a Pichapong's movie, and the mood and the lighting here is highly important and why these shots are effective in their technique of veiling. The lighting is basically all coming from the back. They're characters and the veil itself is backlit. If it was front lit, you'd never have the same effect. It would most likely cover most of the frame and you wouldn't have access to these characters even though they're backlit. There's so much about body language on the shots as well. You wouldn't be able to get that if it was front lit, because then the veil itself, the actual fabric, will be absorbing most of the light and obscuring the frame. Having curtains and fabrics, it's a technique that obviously has been overused. I think what makes it different here in a Pichapong's movie is that it gives this ghostly quality to it, and then that's obviously related to what the movie is talking about. Here is a shot from Soleil, Chris Marker movie, and the veiling effect here is created through the rain. It looks like a painting. You wouldn't have the same effect if you were just looking at these two women through the glass. But because of the rain, we're not 100% sure what's going on inside. So it becomes like a barrier a little bit between us and the access to what's happening. So adding water or other elements to glass can also create a different form of veiling. One of my all-time favorite movies, it's called Before the Rain. And basically this couple was struggling to connect and literally find the right time and the right place to be together. They get into a cab, and throughout the whole trip, you're just outside seeing them through the windows. So at first you're like trying to understand what's going on inside the cab, and it's frustrating, but then once you understand what the filmmaker is doing, you surrender to it, and this world outside starts to take over because that's how they're feeling. I think the image is very poetic, and what the director was trying to achieve is poetic, but it's also very functional to the characters and the emotions they're going through in that scene. Day is a movie that takes place over a weekend in the suburbs of Chicago. Our main character, Jay, is figuring out his own identity and decides to go through the pronoun of they because they cannot function in a world that is binary. So they are experimenting with gender identities. So the idea of Jay being partially covered or obstructed in some way or another always existed from the get-go, and Ahita and I talked about that in our very first meetings. And when we start working together, we start trying to figure out how was that going to be incorporated into the film, because it was obviously something aesthetically that we were both drawn into it, but how did it relate to our character? We felt that Jay just couldn't function in a binary world where you only have boy and girl, black and white, and Jay couldn't fit into that. So if Jay couldn't see it clearly, then us as audience shouldn't be seeing it clearly either. Kiarostami, in many ways, was a mentor to Anahita, so I always like to say that his soul is in every shot we did. And certified copy was something that we did at homage, I guess, in many ways during our car shots, because in certified copy there, Juliette Binoche's character and her husband basically are going through trees and things, and then most of it is covered, and usually you would have a shot like that that is clean, you know, you use a polarizer and you clear up the frame so that you have direct contact with the characters. But it fascinated me that if that didn't necessarily happen. So this shot here that I have from Day is a direct reference to Certified Copy. Breaking the frame into sections is also a form of veiling. You're also hiding some elements from the audience. In Day, our main reference, it was a movie called Documentaire, Agnes Varda, and we use this technique when Jay is faced with the challenges of the hormone blockers that they're taking, and they have to go and pick a side of the hospital because one side is a man's bathroom and the other is a woman's bathroom, and Jay cannot pick. And then when Jay enters the bathroom, we saw this mirror, and we love the idea of not being able to see Jay entirely, that, you know, the mirror and the wall are breaking Jay in two parts. Fassbinder has been a reference for my work for many years, and for Day, we use Chinese Roulette, though they're very different themes and stories. The way that a veiling and obscuring frame was used in that film was a reference for us, and it starts by very simple ways, through glasses, through the windows of a car, through the windows of a house, and it starts getting more complex, and he starts using actual objects in frame to break it. And then it becomes more complex, and he uses these objects that have partial mirrors to it. So this shattered image is like a direct correlation to the shattered characters that are sitting in this room. Taking Fassbinder into the project of Day as a reference, we started looking into props and elements on the set decoration that would help develop that technique of veiling and obscuring frame. And we took a few weeks to test the thickness and what kind of material were the greenhouse and all the little plastic sheets and things that were in the basement that Jay's, you know, it's been covered for most of the beginning of the film. Because, you know, each plastic is gonna photograph in a way, and then depending on how you're lighting, it's gonna read differently too. So it really depends what you're after, and the only way to know is that if you test beforehand, and that's why you need a production designer to be not just decorating a set, but also thinking with you, how are we going to portray this character, because it's totally dependent on what they're going to put in front of lens for you.